Come out with us and play. Love your London. Have a banana. In the third episode on Alperton, Stonebridge and Monk's Park, we'll be talking about another amazing temple, as well as a spooky abandoned nursing home, Twyford Abbey, which, despite its name, has never actually been an abbey. But first, what with the Tokyo Olympics just a few weeks away, we thought we would bring your attention to something that we may be seeing at a future Olympiad, the relatively new sport of footgolf, which is taking Alperton and Hanger Lane area by storm. So first of all, just a little bit about footgolf. Now, footgolf is a fairly new sport, I believe. It came from Holland, is that right?
Yes, there's a couple of different stories, like, urban legends. Some people say it started in Spain, others say Holland. It's kind of got links to Tottenham Hotspur as well, apparently, because there was a Dutch footballer that used to play at Tottenham, and they used to kick the balls back to the changing rooms after a game and count how many shots. And then the first official tournament was in the Netherlands as well. And then it came over here kind of from about 2012, maybe slightly earlier or a year later, and now there's UK championships, national championships, world championships.
And the UK is quite good at it.
The UK, I think we have the British champion, a chap called Ben Clark. I have met him once. I played on the tour many years ago. I've been playing about 6 years now. And it's a great sport that anyone can play. It's a lot easier than golf. You just be able to kick a ball, really, and it doesn't matter how good you are. It's very inclusive for everyone. And it's lots of fun.
And I believe that women and men play together in the game.
Yes, that's right. Yes, both sexes play, young and old. We've had kids as young as 4 and up to like grandparents have been round. So late 70s, 80s. So absolutely anyone can play.
And am I right in thinking that there is a possibility that this might become an Olympic sport in a few years?
Well, I think that's the plan. Yes, that's the direction that they'd like to take it. Certainly, how far that is off, I don't know, but it's grown in popularity all the time. So, and you'll see for yourself how much fun it is. So we do have a lot of special needs groups that come round. It's really good for them. We have people with Down syndrome and also severe autism, and they love it because it's kind of routine and it's repetitive, and and they just like going round. Some of them can kick the balls for miles, and others just do little kicks all the way round, but they really enjoy it as well. So it really is open to everyone.
The residents of Alperton, Hanger Lane and indeed Brent and Ealing in general are very fortunate to have this state-of-the-art faculty right on their doorstep in Hanger Hill Park. The governing body for footgolf, the FIFG, or Fédération Internationale du Footgolf, has recently been recognised by the GAISF, or the Global Association of International Sports Federations in Lausanne, as a competitive sport, which is the first major step towards winning acceptance by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, to be included in future Olympic Games programmes, potentially joining cricket as a new Olympic sport in the 2028 Olympics, to be held in Los Angeles. So, if you want to see your child excel at a sport that will not break the bank, you've got 7 years. Start the clock.
The 7th, which is down to there, this is a good one because you just have to
flag.
The blue flag through there. The hill will do the work for you, and it will just roll all the way down. So, which is quite good because the 6th, the one before, is uphill, which is a really struggle. So once people get up there, they're quite relieved to know that the next one is actually downhill. If you kind of stay left as much as you can, you don't have to give it too much power, and just kind of aim for that last tree over there, and then
And that is a fine kick by Tristán White from Great Britain. Just watch that ball roll down the hill towards the fairway from the teeing ground. Absolutely beautiful still there. Could be on the cusp of Olympic glory for Team GB at the 2028 Summer Olympics here in Los Angeles.
It's actually trickier the closer to the hole you get.
Right.
Because with the first or second shot, you can always correct yourself.
Yes.
But once you get through to closer to the hole, that's when it's quite, can get a bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
So I'll have a go from here. So basically the technique when you're closer, you can use your side foot, or if you're a bit closer, some people just like a little toe punt.
Yep.
Because you can kind of keep it quite straight with that. The trouble is there's a lot more room for error in that, so it can go off. So I prefer a side foot. So there's a little bit of a hill at the other side there. So I don't want to go too hard, otherwise it will just keep going. So let's see where we go with that. Hopefully if that stops about there. So you want to try and get a medium power in it, not too hard.
So this is for the bogey. Tristán will take the lead if this goes in, and oh no, he's overhit the mark. He will be disappointed with that, I am sure.
So I take it you pull the flag out now, yeah?
You can pull the flag out. At the moment, due to COVID, we do have signs asking people not to remove the flag.
I won't.
It doesn't actually make much difference, really. Some people prefer to have the flag in just as a guide.
So if it hits the flag, it's in, basically.
Take it out in non-COVID times. So let's have a go here. Oh,
there we go.
I done that in 3. So actually, this is par 4. So I done that 1 under. That's good. That's good. Right. That's pretty good. Now, if you can kind of the same kind of power and accuracy there.
Oh.
That's where it's tricky. You see. You really have to concentrate when you're close to the hole.
Oh.
That happens a lot as well. So don't worry about that.
Oh dear. There we go.
Yes, good shot, well done.
Okay.
Really good. When the blue flags are out, we do ask people with dogs just to stick to the perimeter, because some people are a bit afraid of dogs.
Oh, and they come darting out, and you've got yourself,
Yeah, exactly.
So this is
over there.
Children now run after the balls and stuff.
So this area is public access. It's not. You can't.
Well, it's not gated.
No.
Yeah, it's a bit ambitious to do.
Yeah.
So, but we don't stop anyone from walking around. We just ask, if you can, just give way to the foot golfers.
No tents, no fires, and pick up it after yourself.
Exactly. Good. That's a good whack. Well done. That should come round to the left a little bit.
Right into the river.
Should help.
Woohoo!
There is a ditch there.
There it goes. Into the trap.
Oh yes, right into a trap. But that happens to lots of people, so I wouldn't worry about that. The tricky shot now is that you have to try and scoop it out, which is a bit harder.
As you can imagine, there's loads more footage that we could have shown you, but there just isn't enough time. So instead you're seeing on your screen right now some of the highlights, and that way we can skip forward and let Paul tell us how much it costs to play this gentle sport.
So at the moment we're a 9-hole course. So for adults to go round once, it's £8, and for children it's £5. So if you want to go around twice, it's just £1 extra for children and £2 extra for adults. So it just becomes 6 and 10. Okay. So and even going round once, it can two guys who are really good at football can do it in maybe 45 minutes. Yeah. But then a group of kids, it could take an hour and a half. Yeah. So that's not bad when you consider, it's a leisurely day and, you can take your time and, just enjoy it really. So
do you sell beer here, by the way?
We don't. You are allowed to bring your own beers along. Yeah. Some clubs do have licenses. Yeah. We don't have a license, so we just sell soft drinks and ice creams. Yeah. But you're more than welcome if you wanted to come along to bring your own beers. We did actually have a little girl called Izzy who was only 10, and she actually got, on the first one that we done, she got a hole-in-one on that one. Wow. So, and she was over the moon. She'd never played football before. She just caught the roll in the right place and it went straight in, and she loved it, and we gave her a free ice cream, and she was made up. So
maybe there's a future champion there in the making.
Well, exactly, yes, definitely.
That will have a real impact on her.
Yeah.
On the other side of the North Circular, or the A406 to give it its official title, is a short cycle path that takes you through Hanger Hill Wood. Now, hanger has nothing to do with airplane hangars. For a start, it's spelt Hanger. It comes from Old English hangra, which means a wooden slope, and this is pretty much all that's left of said wooden slope, sadly. Now we're off on our way to Park Royal Station, but on our route a blue plaque catches our eye. We just have to tell you about it. We are on our way to Park Royal Station, and we couldn't not pass by the home of Alan Blumlein. Now, as you know, we're very interested in the history of television and history of sound and recording. We went to Alexandra Palace and spoke quite a lot about the origins of the BBC, and we also spoke quite a lot about Robert Paul when we were in Coney Hatch Lane and Sydney Road in near Muswell Hill, about the one of the beginners of early British cinema. This gentleman here is no less important. He basically invented stereo. He invented binaural sound, or stereo as we call it today, stereophonic sound. So back in 1931 he was in the cinema and he thought, hang on, I'm sitting over here and there's an actor over there, yet the sound's coming from over there in the one speaker. Why don't we have a way of splitting the sound? So that's when he got this eureka moment and created binaural sound. He's invented loads of stuff, but really it is stereo that I mean, he also did some really interesting microphones. I think they're called the very first long-tailed pair microphone, and he also patented the ultra-linear amplifier as well. But yeah, there you go. This is where he lived from, let me get my glasses, 1903 to 1942. So bang in the middle of his eureka moment. That's where he was living. Really important person. Anyway, let's get to Park Royal. Alan Blumlein certainly didn't have to go very far to catch the train, as Park Royal Station is just a short walk away from his house, though it didn't actually open until 1931, coincidentally the same year as his eureka moment. Now, before 1931, Alan would have used a station that this one replaced, Park Royal and Twyford Abbey, on the then District Line. Now, we're going to be telling you a little bit more about Twyford Abbey later on in this episode, so please don't go away. But now back to the current Park Royal Station. Like Alperton Station, Park Royal is on the Piccadilly line, though unlike Alperton it isn't in Zone 4 but is in fact in Zone 3, though of course there were no such things as zones back in Al's day. It's Grade 2 listed, and to look at it you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is a Charles Holden designed station, but actually it isn't, though clearly it's in Holden's style. And would you believe it, the station has a toilet. However, do note that said toilet is on the train side of the ticket barriers, unlike at Hanger Lane Station, which we're going to be having a look at in a moment. Now, unfortunately, the station is not accessible at the moment. However, the plan is for this station to become step-free by the spring of 2024. So, it's a cautious cheer. I say cautious because this was meant to happen in 2022, so the date has already slipped at least once, and I dare say it may again, though what with the pandemic we can probably cut TfL a little bit of slack. But the really interesting thing about this station is the fact that the platforms are ever so slightly sloping upwards from south to north, and this is the only London station to have a sloping platform. As you can see, this is an educational channel. Now, while we're in train spottery mood, we may as well tell you about Hanger Lane Station 2, which is so close by that there is an OSI between the two stations. Now, OSI stands for Out of Station Interchange. Basically, though they're on two different tube lines, because you can walk between them in a few moments, it will count as a single fare, as long as you don't leave too long between touching out from one station and touching in at the next. Now, Hanger Lane Station is set in the middle of what is regarded, at least by motorists, as one of the most dangerous places, apparently, in the whole country.
You sure know how to show a lady a good time.
We are here at an area that instills fear in thousands of British motorists. This is called the Hanger Lane Gyratory. 30,000 square metres of roundabout hell. Gyratory is just another posh word for a roundabout. It's not really strictly round, it's kind of sort of squarish with roundy corners. 500 motorists were surveyed, and they actually put this roundabout, this junction, as the scariest in the whole of the country. It's really quite amazing, because when you think of the magic roundabout, in Swindon, which everyone thinks is going to be scariest, that really strange structure with lots of mini roundabouts going around it. We can go in any direction around all the roundabouts. That only came 7th place. This came top, mainly because I think people hear always on the news how there's accidents at the Hanger Lane Gyratory, tailbacks going 5 miles, etc. I think its reputation is pretty bad, but one of the things that it's really hard when you're driving on it is it's quite hard to know exactly what lane you're meant to be in, who has the right of way. You get lots and lots of problems arising. Now that area, that wooded area, is very important. That is in fact a natural reserve, a nature reserve. The station itself is really odd, the Hanger Lane station, because as you'll see now, it's on the you can't access it from street level. You can only access it through the subways underneath, but it looks like a huge flying saucer. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favourite stations. It's on the central line and it's in zone 3, which is just adds to the whole connectivity of this whole area, because I mean, if you've got zone 3s, you've got zone 4s, you've got the central, you've got the Piccadilly line. At the moment it's not accessible. It was meant to be accessible last year, but obviously the mayor said that it would be accessible by summer 2020. He said that at the beginning of 2020. Obviously he has very genuine reasons why it was not finished on time, one of them being the Rona, the other being when they were trying to do work to test for accessibility, they discovered loads of underground streams and stuff which they're not sure, they had no idea they were there, so that's completely put a huge sort of delay on everything. There is a toilet. The toilets are on the outside of the barrier, which means that you have to be on the street side in order to go to them. So it's the opposite to Park Royal, where you have to be on the train side in order to access the toilets. They're not accessible, but they probably will be when they make the whole station accessible. As for when that date will happen, I believe it's going to be sometime this year, which is good, but obviously these things do slip and we are living in extraordinary times.
What have you...
Okay.
Now, don't go anywhere. In this episode, we are still talking about the Neasden Temple. We're going to show you some of the sights of Stonebridge. We'll be visiting an amazing Chinese supermarket, talking about the old Guinness factory, and, as promised, the abandoned Twyford Abbey. But before we leave the Hanger Lane Gyratory, we must heap praise upon the Ashbourne Bar and Restaurant. Granted, it was happy hour, but 4 pieces of delicious cod, loads of chips, plus mushy peas came to just £8 total. Pints were all £3 and bottles £4. No, we have not been paid to advertise the Ashbourne. We just felt that our viewers would appreciate a tasty bargain. We pay for all our own meals, and money is really scarce right now. We rely on our patrons to help us with some of our expenses. But if you wish to help us for free, then please share this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Oh, and hit that like button underneath the video. We're going to wait just for a second so that you can do that now. Cool. Now, in episode 1 of our Alperton series, we spoke a lot about the amazing Shri Swaminarayan Hindu Mandir, also known as the Wembley Temple. If you missed it, there'll be a link to the Alperton playlist at the end of this video. But now for something similar.
Okay, so we are at another Hindu temple. This is different to the other one. This is the BAPS Shri Swaminarayan Hindu Mandir. And they just worship the one deity, Swaminarayan.
He has precedence.
He has precedence. They respect all the other deities.
The avatars are there?
Yes, the avatars are there, but the only worship Swaminarayan.
Yeah.
It is unfortunately it's closed because of COVID. It is absolutely beautiful. I actually came here with Sharon and my mum not that long ago, and I also have a haveli. Basically what a haveli is, I mean in this context, the haveli is a cultural centre. Obviously haveli in Hindu refers to just a very large house, and it is carved from wood. 10 new trees were planted for every single tree that was felled in its construction. The haveli itself actually took 20 months to build. It's absolutely breathtaking inside. It has a fantastic restaurant called Sharon, and for someone like me who cannot eat onion, So I've got a severe intolerance to onion. It's fantastic because they have a Jain menu as well. All the cuisine is pure vegetarian according to the Sattvic cuisine, but the Jain stuff is particularly good for me because absolutely no onion there at all. It's a real shame. It's a real shame it's closed because I really am hungry.
Oh yeah, I'm hungry too.
Whereas the other mandir used yellow limestone from Jaisalmer and then brought piece by piece here. The limestone used to make this is actually from Bulgaria. So it was brought from Bulgaria to India. I think there were 1,500 artisans were involved in its construction. They carved it into 26,300 pieces, all different sizes. The largest piece weighed 5.6 tons and the smallest piece just 50 grams, I believe, and the whole thing was put together in 2.5 years. And so, I mean, yeah, okay, the carbon footprint's not great because all this stone has come from Bulgaria, Italy, India, and then brought back again. But I suppose by planting 10 trees for every tree they knock down in order to build a Haveli, they've sort of gone some way towards atoning for the issues. Just like the other temple, the more holistic temple, this, like all temples of the Hindu faith, is built without any steel reinforcements. The only metals allowed being gold, silver, and copper, I believe, and no, everything is self-loading. Everything is.
And the geometry is strict.
And that is, as explained earlier, prescribed by the Vastu Shastras. So basically, they're making good use of the time that this is closed during the pandemic, and using it to clean the place up.
Well, interesting is a very subjective term, of course, but we did find on our travels through Stonebridge a commissioned piece of public art called Sundisc, a rather strange and somewhat naive piece, it has to be said, but which, I guess, the locals have grown to love. The steel sculpture itself is by Geraldine Konyn, and it stands atop a dais into which have been etched by Guy Paterson headlines from the local Brent and Harlesden press. Oh well, someone clearly loves it. It's not really our thing, but as I said, interesting is a very subjective term. Now what really is interesting is that fine building over there, number 1 Moorland Gardens, which was designed in 1876 by Henry Edward Kendall. Believe it or not, Brent Council is planning on knocking the whole thing down and building residential units as well as a new adult education centre, and some local residents are really not happy about this one bit. Apparently, a heritage impact assessment has decided that this fine building is not significantly historical. Well, we interviewed the new mayor of Brent, Leah Colachico, in our previous episode outside the Ace Cafe, so presumably she is now a subscriber to our channel. If you are watching this, Your Excellency, and if you want to make a real impact during your mayoralty, then perhaps consider some of the many objections to the demolition of this fine Victorian villa, because quite frankly, if the council is not careful, the entire character of this area will be ripped out, building by building. Love your London. Incidentally, should the demolition of Altamira indeed go ahead as planned, the Bridge Park Hotel around the corner will be the last building standing from Henry Edward Kendall Jr.'s original Stonebridge Park estate. Fortunately, that is Grade 2 listed, so should still manage to remain alive for a little while longer, but who knows these days. A little further down a hillside, there's a turning to the left called Wesley Road, which leads into a road called Shakespeare Avenue. A little note to those subtitle readers. No, that is not a typo. The street signs leave out the E at the end, as though we were living in the English Augustan era, even though Google Maps seems to insist on including it. But, as you're going to find out, this is a bit of a strange area, a kind of twilight zone where stuff doesn't make sense. For a start, there's a school down here which used to teach in Welsh. The London Welsh School, or Ysgol Gymraeg Llundain, to give it its official name, teaches all lessons in Welsh up until age 7 and then teaches bilingually till age 11. It is the only Welsh immersion school outside the country of Wales and Patagonia in Argentina. The school moved in 2015 to nearby Hanwell, but local Stonebridgians were brought up speaking fluent Welsh. Who knew? So, not strange enough for you yet? Well, just further down that path there are a couple of five-a-side football pitches, a so-called Centre of Excellence to develop potential future stars for a Premier League team. I wonder which local team runs that. Norwich City FC, that's who. Yep, leaving the E off the end of Shakespeare doesn't seem that weird anymore now, does it? Anywho, we've spoken about the Welsh, now it's time for the Irish, because this area used to be famous for a certain tall blonde in a black dress. Yep, we are getting close to going full circle and joining up with Park Royal again, and that can only mean one thing: Guinness.
So, here we see a little underpass going underneath the North Circular Road. That road over there is actually built for people who work at the Guinness factory. The Guinness factory used to be just down there, the other side of those trees. Now, funnily enough, but this is quite, I mean, obviously they no longer make Guinness there, but Diageo took over the Guinness make, although the Guinness brand is still 51% in the hands of the Guinness family, but the rest of it is largely owned by Diageo, and their headquarters are just there as well. So at least the area still has a Guinness connection. But as I said, all those houses down Iveagh Avenue were originally built for people who work at the Guinness factory. It's actually a perfect place, obviously, for the Guinness factory because of all the canals. The Grand Union Canal, the Regent's Canal, you go right up to Lancaster and all sorts of places. So absolutely perfect for distribution. Clever people.
So we have talked about the Indian population, the Welsh and the Irish. Well, locals to this area have not one but two massive oriental supermarkets. The well-known chain Lun Fung has a massive store at One Glacier Way in Alperton, but we rather like Hoo Hing on the North Circular Road. It's a little bit more expensive than Lun Fung, but you do get some really interesting stuff. There's so much to choose from, whether it be ramen, live lobsters, sake, loads of different types of sauces and pickles.
Bargains, bargains, bargains.
We're right near Hangar Lane. And what do you think? This looks a bit like a hangar, doesn't it? Would you say this looks like a hangar? It looks like a store, but it's not. It's obviously it's. Yeah, well, it looks like a hangar to me.
Like an aircraft hangar.
And now, of course, Hangar Lane has nothing to do with aircraft hangars. It comes from the Old English hangra, meaning a hill. It's a wooden slopey hill, and basically nothing to do with hangars at all. Funnily enough. Hang on. What's going on?
It's a hangar.
This is a hangar. What? You know what? This is all Stelios' fault. Well, it's all Stelios. Again, nothing to do with Hangar Lane. But over here we have part of Stelios' massive...
His Orange Empire.
His Orange Empire. We have EasyLand. We have Easy Food Store. We have an Easy Gym. I think it's open already. I know that's quite new.
Rental car, whatever.
Yeah.
Easy car.
Let's have a quick look. Easy storage. Easy come, easy go. And just opposite Easy's Empire, after this bus goes, that quite fortunately is in our way.
And now there's a cube van going to be in the way.
Okay, let me stop them. No. Now behind that wall over there, which you can, behind that wall over there, is a really interesting old abbey. Well, I say it's an abbey. It's called Twyford Abbey. I think probably the best thing is because normally you'd be able to see it from the North Circular, but it's all closed up. Just going to wait for it. See, can we see any of it? Sort of see it. There's lots of trees in the way, but it's over there. Loads of parts of the farm buildings. We're going to see if we can have a better look at it from the other side, but it's a very interesting place.
We'd love to be able to fly our drone over this abandoned abbey, but the rules say we can't. And to be honest, what with the frenetic traffic thundering along the North Circular Road, perhaps that's a good thing, as we have a tendency to lose control of the drone far too easily. So we're going to have to pretend again with good old Google Earth. We know it's not the most polished thing you'll have seen, but one day, if you start liking and recommending us and making our channel famous, we might be able to purchase some decent tech, or take drone lessons at least. See you on the other side of the abbey.
This is Twyford Abbey Road, named after Twyford Abbey, which actually isn't an abbey. It's all closed down at the moment. No one's actually used it since it closed as a nursing home in 1988. Since then it's been a sort of like a place for urban explorers and graffiti tag writers, but there has been a house here since the Middle Ages. Now the current building was extended in the early 1800s and it became a nursing home in 1902 until 1988. As I said, it was never an actual abbey. This was a name that was given to it in the early 1800s and the name stuck, and so this whole area is actually called Twyford Abbey now. You can actually get in there and have a look.
Yeah, but
we're not going to do that
we don't
because
encourage.
we're responsible.
No, and look.
It is a place where a lot of urban explorers go.
Yeah, razor wire. Anyone?
Yeah,
razor wire.
One person who has had a peek inside and has documented it for YouTube is psychogeographer John Rogers, who filmed a visit he paid to the Abbey back in 2015 with fellow psychogeographer Nick Papadimitriou. John has very kindly given us permission to show us a bit of his footage now, so fortunately you won't have to see me tear my Love Your London shirt on the razor wire or get stopped by the police. Again. Oh, that's a reference to our very first episode in Acton, in case you're wondering. Anyhow, we really appreciate being able to use this footage, and there will not only be a link to the full video in the description, but also the end of this video, which is coming up shortly. We really recommend John's YouTube channel. If you like our stuff, you'll probably like his too. A link to John's channel, as well as to his vlog, The Lost Byway, is also in the description, and there's a link to buy his book, This Other London: Adventures in the Overlooked City. So, what happened? Well, for once, developers did not get their way. This whole area was supposedly going to be converted into 90 dwellings, 25 of which would have been in the Grade 2 listed Abbey itself. Now, you know how we feel about redevelopment. Next week, we're releasing not one, but two specials about worrying happenings at the Truman Brewery in Brick Lane and Jocelyn Street Park in Peckham. So, we should be celebrating, but no, this place is in a shocking state. The doors and windows were left open and everything got all rotten. Apparently, the latest plans are that this will become a new secondary school, designed by architects Walter and Cohen. However, this was supposed to have happened quite a few years ago, and was delayed until last year, but we have no idea what the hold-up is this time, because it's clearly nowhere near completed. We don't know how much of the old structure can be salvaged, but what we can say is that after 30 years of criminal neglect, probably not that much. Next time on Love Your London, we visit Stonebridge Park Station, the childhood homes of baby Keith Moon. We show you the Brent River Park, aka Tokington Recreation Ground, aka whatever you want to call it, because the locals are going to keep calling it Monk's Park anyway. And we get a tour of the wonderful St Raphael's Edible Garden, as well as the Soufra Northwest London Food Bank. You know what? We think it's going to be another long one. Till next time. From Acton Town to Wimbledon, from Brixton to beyond, love your London, have a banana.